KSEE 24 brings you a lifestyle show from women you know with Alex Delgado. Now Central Valley Today.
We begin with some important information when it comes to the snow. There are certain things to look out for to prevent injuries in your kids from the chilly months that still lie ahead. And here to explain is Carlos Flores. He is the trauma coordinator with Valley Children's Hospital. And there we're looking at some safety tips right off the bat because we've got a lot to get to today. Carlos, how are you?
I'm great. And you know what? There is snow up there. We were just up there last week and found some snow above 7,000 feet.
All right, so there are a lot of things to keep in mind if you are in the snow. First of all, getting there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that our travel is very safe in the mountain areas. So first of all, knowing what the road conditions are, that's important. Calling ahead and calling Caltrans or CHP, you can find out what the road conditions are. But certainly planning for changes in weather up in the mountains that can change pretty quickly. Always carry tire chains and know how to use them. That's one very important thing to remember. But also carry extra provisions, blankets, food, a change of clothing, and then also water. Water is something that's really important for us. And then also make sure to let somebody know where we're going and where we're going to be when we expect to be back.
Well, that's a great tip.
Right.
All right, so what about once you're there, how do you dress? Because a lot of us, for example, it's nice and warm today.
Yes, right.
So I wouldn't think of putting on a heavy jacket.
That's exactly right. That's why we encourage dressing in layers. And in fact, staying away from cotton and using wool because cotton absorbs water a lot more readily than wool does. Wool doesn't actually absorb water. And it can keep you a lot warmer. So dressing in layers, having something thin underneath and then a couple of layers on top. And then especially with kids and especially with the younger kids, the rule of thumb is essentially put one more layer on them that we would ourselves to make us comfortable.
Okay, that's great to know because a lot of times these kids act like they're not cold.
That's right. And
but they are.
They are.
Yes, they are cold. Okay.
That's absolutely right.
Especially with our babies.
Right.
So remember to keep them warm and cover their little heads with hats.
That's absolutely right. They've got those big old giant bowling ball heads on top of little tiny scrawny necks. And you know what? They do lose a lot of heat that way.
And don't forget your boots as well, right?
Boots are very important. And in fact, we'd like to thank Ava for allowing us to borrow her stuff. She's one of the cutest little girls in the world, incidentally. But anyway, the boots are really important. But also remember when sizing the boots to consider those thick wool socks. You don't want to have them too constricted on the little one's feet.
All right. What about when you get there and you are playing outside, especially maybe in kids? How do you know something's wrong? How do you know somebody might be suffering from hypothermia? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Hypothermia is when the core body temperature decreases to less than 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And it can be a very serious circumstance. Usually, and obviously, shivering is the first thing that will happen. But when you begin to notice neurological changes, such as confusion, slurred speech, nausea and vomiting, then you know you have a more serious problem at hand, in which case you really got to warm that body up. The thing to do is get all the wet clothing off of them, and so that's where the change of clothes would come into play. Okay. Or you can get them underneath like a blanket or a sleeping bag and have skin-to-skin contact because the healthy person's body heat can actually warm up the cold person's body heat just by holding them close.
Okay, okay.
Having them drink warm fluids if they're able to swallow. If they're not able to swallow or are too confused to do that, certainly don't do that. And obviously get them down the mountain into a much warmer area. Call 911 if necessary.
All right, and here we're watching some kids have fun in the snow, sledding, and that kind of thing. So it's always important to remember that they know how to fake it when they're really cold, right? So we have to watch out for all of these symptoms.
And then also with the sledding, one of the things that a lot of people don't really realize is that the velocity of the sleds can get pretty high, especially if you're going down a good steep hill in the ice. Utilizing a ski helmet is appropriate for those circumstances, and certainly when kids are skiing, they need to have helmets on their head.
That's true. And remember to sled on snow, not ice. Now a lot of people do sled on ice because it's faster.
Yes, it's a lot of fun, obviously, and fast, but it can also be very dangerous.
And when you are playing in the snow, obviously stay away from cars, avoid trees. Only because I just saw that video of the kids playing in the snow with cars very nearby.
Well, we told you that we were up just last week,
Yeah.
and the snow level is not very high. It's only a couple of feet in some places, and so rocks and trees are very much obstacles up there, so to be very mindful of that sort of thing.
All right, I've got to go back a little bit because we were talking about hypothermia. Let me ask you about acute mountain sickness.
Right, and some people do suffer from that, and unfortunately, a couple of years ago, we actually had a fatality as a result of that. And so what usually happens above, usually about 8,000 feet, and because of the thinness of the air, to put it in layperson's terms, it can create certain things that happen with the body that the body's not used to. So if we're not acclimated to being high altitude and all of a sudden we're up in the higher elevations and being physical, exerting ourselves, we can succumb to high altitude sickness, something also known as high altitude pulmonary edema, where fluid sets into the lungs. Now, should any of that happen, again, you would see neurological changes, so confusion, headache, nausea, vomiting, exhaustion, and the first rule of thumb is to get the person down the hill, get them into lower elevations.
Okay.
It certainly can be a 911 situation if the person is obtunded or unable to respond appropriately. And also making sure that rather than exerting ourselves, if we're going to stay on there up in the elevations for an extended period of time, to allow ourselves to become acclimated to the higher elevation.
Okay, before you go and do any activities.
Yeah, exertion or anything like that, snowshoeing or whatever the like.
Is that why you also say we shouldn't drink alcohol?
Alcohol has problems across the board. Obviously, it impairs our judgment, first of all.
Yeah.
And so we think we could do things that we probably shouldn't be doing, like going down the Black Diamond run instead of the Bunny Run or something like that, right? But things like that.
Yeah.
But it also poses problems with regards to hypothermia, and then also can contribute to high altitude sickness. So yeah, it's really not a good idea to go up there and party the town away. You know, just obviously we don't like to dissuade anybody from having fun, but certainly keep all of that in perspective. Plus, mountain road driving is much more hazardous than down here. Anytime, it's never a good time to drink and drive.
Oh yeah, no, that's for sure. And you don't realize that until you start not feeling well after having a couple of glasses of wine. So if you, because this happened to me, I'm going to be honest. I thought, you know, normally could drink 1 or 2 glasses of wine. Up there at Yosemite, it wasn't. I didn't feel good.
Okay.
So that's a good reminder for all of us. Tell us where you're at exactly, Carlos. And I know you're at Valley Children's, but how can people get hold of you?
Valley Children's Hospital. You can certainly phone the main hospital line, 353-3000. Ask for me by name, and I'll be glad to talk to you.
All right, and if you want more on these tips that you just saw or heard of, go to safekids.org. That's the website. You can find a lot of great information on how to keep our kids safe on that website. Carlos, Happy New Year to you.
And Happy New Year to you.
Did you have a good vacation? Oh, were you on vacation?
Blessedly, I was able to take some time off, yes.
Okay, good. And it was good?
And we enjoyed it, yes, very much so.
All right, on to a new year, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.